Hey there everybody, and welcome to my review of the Honda CRV Hybrid. Now Honda are actually one of the first manufacturers to develop the original sports utility vehicle, and by that I mean you had a car that looked like an SUV but handled like a road car. And of course, as time has gone on, everyone has jumped on the bandwagon. So for this Mark V version of the CRV, Honda have made a couple of very key changes. So number one, they've ditched the diesel and you can only get the Mark V CRV as a petrol or petrol hybrid. Point number two, as I just mentioned, you can now get the CRV as a petrol hybrid, and on the non-hybrid versions, this is point number three, you can also get it as a 7-seater. However, I've got the petrol hybrid version and I'm going to find out if it's actually any good as a sports utility vehicle, and also should you consider a hybrid in the new CRV. So stick with me to find out. Styling wise, it's very clear that the new CRV is A, Japanese, and B, a Honda. It definitely looks a lot more badass than the Mark IV CRV, which in some trim levels looked a little bit plain and boring. However, I have still got the same criticism with the Mark V as I did have with the Mark IV, which is actually the styling at the rear end of the car looks very much like the Volvo XC60. However, imitation is the highest form of flattery. Now when it comes to rivals, this is going to be pitted against the Toyota RAV4, so when it comes to looks, click up in the top right hand corner and let me know what you think is the best looking self-charging hybrid SUV. Is it the Honda CRV or the Toyota RAV4? But I definitely think it's got a lot more presence than the Mark IV CRV, and depending on the trim level, if the higher up you go, you do get a bit more chrome and some flashy alloys, and therefore it does have a lot of presence about it. I actually do really like it. But yeah, that's the outside of the Honda CRV. Let's have a look at the inside. Sat in the CRV, of course this being an SUV, you've got a nice high seating position, so getting in and out of the car is really easy, and there's also the added bonus that the doors do open nice and wide, so if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then this is definitely one car to consider. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, there's plenty of adjustment in the seat itself and also in the steering wheel, where you've got both rake and reach adjustment. I also find that these chairs as well, these seats are incredibly comfortable. In fact, I'm going to nickname them bear chairs because they even hold my chunky bum in place. And I've had a couple of passengers who are a little bit bigger than myself and they've had no problems getting comfortable in the front and back of the CRV. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat and up front, you do find that the interior quality has taken a step up over the Mark IV. So we have got soft touch plastics on top of the dash and on the doors. We've got soft touch on the centre part here with some faux stitching. Do apologise there. Let's get the steering wheel locked in place. And there are some hard plastics further down in the cabin. However, being a typical Honda, there are these patches of leatherette, so you can rest your knee on them whilst you're doing long journeys, and that is one thing I do like about the Honda interiors. And then in terms of ergonomics, it's actually not too bad. There's not as many buttons as you would probably expect. Now that is a good thing and also a slightly bad thing. So on the center console here, the main instrument area is actually where the gearbox is, or lack of gearbox, but the buttons to do the transmission, and they're in like a little center row of buttons there. So there's only 4 to choose from, and that is drive, neutral, reverse and park. And then on the left hand side we've got the driver mode, so there is sport, eco and also a dedicated EV mode if you're doing any kind of slow journeys or slow driving in traffic, so that way you're not using any petrol. And then we have got a electric handbrake with auto hold as well, which is also a nice feature to have. And then on the right hand side, just below the air vent, we've got the starter button and also buttons for all the safety features of the car. Now in terms of the infotainment system, it is nice and high up on the dash, but when the car's turned off, it looks like a big screen, but when you turn it on, you actually find out you've only got a 7-inch screen. And let's be honest, now in 2019, 7 inches is just not good enough. We all want more. So some of its rivals, like the Skoda Kodiaq for example, have got an 8-inch touchscreen as standard, and it does go up to 9.2. So that's something I would like to see Honda do in regards to the infotainment system. Also, the actual infotainment system itself, as you probably might know from other reviews, it's just not the best system out there. The menu systems are a little bit laggy and are not the easiest to navigate, especially on the move. However, you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that is a saving grace for it. Now when it comes to storage, it's actually pretty good as well, but again, is a little bit hit and miss. So the door bins are nice and big, and they have got a couple of areas where you can chuck some bottles in, but they're not lined with fabric, so if you do chuck any loose items in there, they are going to rattle around all over the place. And then underneath the safety buttons there is a little bit of extra stowage there, but again it's not got a lid or anything on there, so you could chuck some coins in there, but you would hear them rattle about. Now on the center console side, just below the transmission buttons, we have got a little area where you can put the key there or charge a mobile phone, because you've got a 12-volt socket. Then we've got a couple of cup holders behind them, which are of a decent size, but the great thing about having the hybrid is that if you do put a bottle in there, you're not going to knock it pressing the buttons in changing gears. And then just behind that we have got the center cubby, so there is a center cubby, but there is a nice large storage area there, and you've also got two USB ports, another 12-volt socket, and a HDMI input socket. And you've got this little tray as well, if I just move that up there, which you can slide forward and back. Now if you slide it forward, it's quite nice because it does cover what's actually in the main section of the center console storage area, but if you do slide it back, you do run the risk of people looking into the car and possibly seeing any valuable items you do put in there, so you can't cover it up fully. But you can also remove that tray as well if you really want to put any large items in the center storage area. And another feature as well is that the armrest does also slide forward, so that is very handy. And as you can see, it's actually raised quite high, so if you are doing any long distance journeys, it is nice and relaxing whilst you're driving. Then we have got the glove box, which is unfortunately of a pretty small size. In fact, you can see there we've got the owner's manual in there, and it does take up quite a bit of space. So all in all, the centre section here for cubby spaces is actually really good. It is just let down by the glove box. But all in all, I really do like how Honda have reimagined the CRV's cabin, especially against going the Mark IV, where there was that extra display up high on the dashboard. So it's quite nice that they've done away with that. And then behind the steering wheel we have got a couple of TFT screens, and they do house a lot of information if you go through the driver menus, but it's not as configurable as something like the Skoda Kodiaq if you go for the digital display. However, as I said, you can get a lot of information there. But all in all, it's a nice comfortable place to sit, and that's the front of the CRV. Let's have a little look at the back. Sat in the back of the CRV, I think you can clearly see where I'm going to go with this. It's incredibly spacious back here. Now that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got a huge amount of knee room, and headroom is really good as well. As mentioned, I have had passengers sat in the back of the CRV, and they are a little bit bigger than me. I say a little bit, they're actually 6'3", and they had no problems getting comfy in the back of the CRV. In terms of cubby spaces, that's also pretty good as well. We've got some very usable door bins, and also we've got a centre armrest with a couple of extra cup holders. However, there is no through loading going into the boot. Now the windows themselves are again absolutely huge, allowing a lot of light in, but they don't open all the way down, so you can't rest your arm on the windowsill on a nice sunny day. But other than that, it's actually really good. We've got some Isofix supports on the outer seats, and they are easy to get to by just kind of sliding in on the fabric. We've got a couple of air conditioning vents here for the rear passengers, and also as an added bonus, we've got two USB charging ports. So again, that's a nice bonus to have in the back of the CRV, which means both rear passengers can be charging their mobile devices. It's actually really comfortable and just incredibly spacious back here, and it does make you feel like you're in almost like a limousine in that respect. But that's enough of the back of the CRV. Let's have a little look at the boot. So opening the boot of the CRV presents you with 497 litres of space. So it just puts it behind the likes of the Skoda Karoq and Peugeot 3008. However, being a Honda, the first thing you do get is a very low boot lip. So if you have got dogs, it is very easy for them to get in and out of. Secondly, being a Honda, it's also got a flat low lip as well, particularly on the 5-seater, and it's a nice square place and loading area to use. And it's not devoid of features either. We've got a 12-volt socket, we've got some tethering hooks as well, and then underneath the boot floor, there's just a little area there for your jack and also your tyre puncture repair kit, because this is the hybrid, so underneath the boot floor you have got the batteries there. We've also got a couple of handles if you want to get the seats down, which makes it nice and easy, and they do go completely flat, so you've got a very usable load space. I'm actually very impressed with the load capacity of the CRV, and it doesn't actually feel like 497 litres. It actually feels a little bit more. However, it's not all perfect, because if you do need to put the tonneau cover anywhere, you're going to have to leave it at home because you can't store it underneath the boot floor. But other than that, it's actually not too bad. But that's enough of the practicality side. Let's go for a drive. So once you get driving in the CRV hybrid, first impressions are actually pretty good. You can tell quite quickly that Honda have designed this Mark V CRV to be a very comfortable SUV and not really sporty. So in that case, it is more of a UV than an SUV. Now, all-round visibility is pretty good. We've got some large wing mirrors which don't give off too much wind noise. We've got some reasonably thin A-pillars, which are actually not too bad. And then looking over your shoulder, well, we've got some big windows in the C-pillars, but I would rather Honda change the shape of them for the next generation, because there is still a pronounced C-pillar there. But luckily on this SR trim, we do have blind spot detection, so that is a big bonus. Now, earlier in the year, I did go to the UK launch of the new CRV and CRV hybrid, and before you got to go for a drive in the cars, we got like a little demonstration and talk from the guys from Honda. And essentially, this isn't kind of your conventional self-charging hybrid that you would get like the likes of the Toyota Prius. You have to think of the CRV hybrid as kind of like a BMW i3, in the sense of that is an electric vehicle, but as an option you can have a small engine to kind of help you as a range extender and add a little bit of a boost to performance. And that's the best way to describe the setup on the CRV hybrid. So this car will do everything in its power to drive in electric form alone, or at least have the batteries working in either sending a little bit of additional power to the rear wheels or just helping with the economy. So when you start the car up on a cold morning, you might find that the first thing you hear is just the petrol engine just in full flow, because it's warming up just so that when you do need that extra bit of performance, it's there to help you. So it is quite an odd way of driving, and it does force you to kind of drive in a different way as you're driving the CRV, but you very quickly get used to it. Now, the other reason I mention that is because in front of the dials, you've got a couple of extra displays. So on the left-hand side, you've got your battery range, or should I say kind of battery power level, which would be an engine temperature gauge. And on the right-hand side, you've got your normal fuel gauge. And as you're driving along, you will find that the battery level does go down, and it can go down quite quickly. However, when you brake, and of course being a hybrid, this is going to have regenerative braking. I really hate saying that word. You do find that it will actually also creep up and fill up very quickly. So it's quite a unique system, and it does work pretty well. Now, being a hybrid, yes, it does come with all the little hybrid bits and bobs that you would expect. So we got some flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel, and they're not to adjust any of the gearing, they're to adjust the severity of the regen braking. We've also got the little display behind the steering wheel which lets you know where the power's going, whether you're driving in EV mode or if the petrol engine is helping out. And you've also got, because this is, as I mentioned, technically not got a transmission per se, you don't have a big chunky handle for the gear lever. It's actually just a little set of buttons there, which does mean when you're going from drive to reverse, it actually is instantaneous. You're straight away in reverse, you put your foot down, and away you go. So that I do really like about the CRV hybrid. It is very quick in that respect, and you know what, driving around now in this little residential area, it is lovely and quiet. The only thing with all these hybrids and electric vehicles is you do get road noise intrusion. That's the only kind of blight to what is a very relaxing car. So what's the ride and handling like in the CRV hybrid? Well, if you've watched my video on the first drives of the petrol engine version and the hybrid version of the CRV, I do mention that the hybrid is actually a bit more comfortable in the ride than the normal petrol engine version, and I think that's because you've got the batteries in the boot and they kind of offset the weight of having an engine at the front of the car. So rear passengers in the CRV I've actually had in this hybrid version have been very comfortable in the back of the car. They've really enjoyed the ride. The only real intrusion, as I've already mentioned, is just road noise coming into the car. And then yes, if you do put your foot down, as I will demonstrate here, is that you do get the engine noise coming into the car because it's just trying to give you all that power there. Now, if you drive in silence, yes, that could be a little bit drony and it could be having a bit of an effect on the refinement levels of the CRV hybrid, but one thing I really do like about this CRV is the actual stereo. Yes, the infotainment system is not the best, but the actual stereo is really good. I really like the sound quality in here. It's much better than the likes of the Skoda Kodiaq that I've driven before. And if you are driving on your own, or if you've got a passenger in the car and you just want to listen to music, it really does help with getting rid of some of that noise from the outside, whether it be the tyre roar or the engine note if you are putting your foot down. But for the most part, if you're driving around town, it's absolutely fine. And that's actually where the CRV hybrid is at home. It's driving around in town, doing short journeys, not doing motorway cruises, because you'd preferably want a diesel car for that, something like a Skoda Kodiaq diesel or Karoq diesel, depending if you want the 5 or 7 seat option there. It's actually just a very comfortable car, and as I mentioned, these seats are really lovely as well. They just hold me in place, and even if I go around the corner quite quickly, I don't feel like I'm going to get thrown out of the seat, despite the fact that this isn't a sporty car, and I know I've already mentioned that. Now, when it comes to the steering in the CRV hybrid, it's actually something I like about it. Firstly, the steering wheel itself has got a nice feel to it. The leather feels nice in your hand, and it's got a nice thickness to it. And then as you're going around, there's actually a little bit of weight to the steering of the CRV, so you don't feel like you're in a video game and it's a bit too light and artificial. There is a little bit of feel and feedback through the wheel, which is actually really nice. And if as you're driving along and you do any kind of small movements, there is a reaction from the car, so that is quite positive. Yes, as I said, it's not full of steering feel because it's not a sporty SUV. Something like a Seat Ateca, or probably even a Seat Tarraco, if we're looking at a hybrid, will have more steering feel to it. But in terms of parking, in terms of just driving about, it does the job absolutely fine. Now, I've got the SR trim level here, and personally it's my pick of the trim levels because you get everything that you would need. You've got front and rear parking sensors with a reversing camera, and I really like the picture quality that it gives you. You've got a full leather interior with heated front seats, dual zone climate control, you've got adaptive cruise, you've got automatic LED lights and rain sensitive wipers. I mean, you've got everything that you would need. If you go to the top of the range EX, you do get a head-up display, panoramic glass sunroof, heated rear seats and a powered tailgate. But personally, I can live without those. This is just the pick of the range for me, and it does mean you can save yourself a little bit of money. I'd also probably look at going for the 2-wheel drive version of the CRV and not the 4-wheel drive version, unless you're planning on taking your CRV hybrid off-road. But really, you're not going to need it for that much, and it does only give you a little bit of an extra boost in terms of performance. If you're after a nice, comfy, relaxing drive and saving yourself a few extra pennies, then yes, go for the 2-wheel drive version. Now, with my time in the CRV hybrid, I have come across a few little niggles, which they do become a little bit annoying, especially with the fact that Honda could rectify them so quickly. So firstly, we've got the paddles behind the steering wheel. So they adjust the severity of the regenerative braking, but you don't really need the paddle on the right hand side, you just need the one on the left. Because as soon as you start tapping it, you can go up to kind of 4 levels of severity. And if you go to the maximum level, which is absolutely fine, you take your foot off, it kind of puts a bit more severity into the braking and you charge the battery a little bit more. That's absolutely fine. But what you find is that the actual setting, once you've set it, disappears after about 5 seconds. So every time you approach a junction, you have to start again. So now it is doing the braking for me, which is absolutely fine. If I just press on the brake a little bit more, it'll actually do a bit more of the braking for me. But as I accelerate, they've actually disappeared. So the next junction I go to, I've got to do that all over again. And that's something I would love Honda just to rectify with either a software update or for the facelifted version, that you can just set the severity and leave it as it is. Kind of like the e-pedal on a Nissan Leaf, where that is really severe when you take your foot off. Now, I'm not saying the CRV should be that severe, but you don't need to reset it every single time. And on that note, we've also got the parking brake. So it is an electric parking brake. That again is absolutely fine. And you do get auto hold. Again, that's brilliant. I love auto hold on an electric brake. But every time you get into the car, you've got to reset it. Otherwise, you'll get to a junction, you'll stay perfectly still, you'll take your foot off the brake, thinking that you've come to a complete stop, and then it starts pulling away like it's in gear. Again, that's something that is so easily rectifiable by Honda, and I would just love them to get that sorted. And that's really kind of my main bugbears I've found with the CRV. Everything else seems to be absolutely fine. It's very comfy. Yes, we've discussed the infotainment system, but I think we'll have to wait for the next generation of CRV to come about before we get something in there. But all in all, they are minor niggles, and they do become quite annoying after a bit of time, especially if you're doing a lot of, say, stop-start driving in traffic, particularly here in Milton Keynes, where we got roundabout after roundabout. You've got to get used to it, and you have to constantly redo that braking severity. But again, as I said, they're little niggles, and I think Honda could easily rectify them. But other than that, I'm really liking the CRV hybrid. It's a lovely, relaxing car to drive. Now, when it comes to economy, that's something I will mention as well. So MPG wise, Honda say I should get around about 51 miles per gallon with this four-wheel drive version. And driving about in town, you can get way above that. It does move quite a lot around the MPG scale. Again, this is one of those cars you're not designed to do long journeys in, or you shouldn't be doing long journeys in. This is perfect for just around town, and you will easily get 50 mpg in driving in a relaxed manner. You have got an eco button, which will kind of take away some of the performance there for you, so when you put your foot down, it just very quietly and relaxing manner go up to the speed that you want. There is a sport button, and I'll be honest, I've only pressed it once and kind of went okay. And then there's also an EV button, which comes in handy if you're driving at slow speeds around a residential area, and it means that the engine's not being used, and that's actually quite handy. But on the outside of the car, you do get this kind of weird sound, because electric cars or hybrid cars have to have that to comply with EU law now, because you could easily sneak up on people if they're crossing the street and they won't hear you coming. So what are my thoughts on the Honda CRV hybrid? Well, compared to the Mark IV CRV, it's a definite improvement in terms of exterior and interior design, interior quality, as well as comfort levels and kit levels. It's also a very practical car, and it's a very comfortable car to drive in as well. However, Honda haven't got it all their own way, because the main rival to the CRV hybrid is Toyota's RAV4 hybrid, which again is a self-charging hybrid just like the CRV. However, Toyota have just announced they are going to do a plug-in hybrid version. So really, if you are looking for this kind of vehicle, you're probably going to end up driving both of them. But this and the RAV4 are actually very similar. They both cost around about the same. The Toyota is a little bit more practical, and it's got a little bit less in terms of CO2. But other than that, the numbers are pretty much bang on the same with each other. It's a lovely, comfortable car, and if Honda can address those little niggles and please get a new infotainment system, please, then Honda will definitely have a stronger car, or a stronger case to look at the CRV hybrid compared to the RAV4. But then again, currently the RAV4 doesn't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, so that is possibly a deal breaker for some people. But yeah, I do like the CRV hybrid. I have got a soft spot for them after having a Mark IV CRV, and I do look forward to Honda pursuing the hybridization of their model range and seeing what they can do for the future, especially as we got the e-Honda coming very soon. So yeah, all in all, it's a very comfortable car, and yeah, I like it. Well done, Honda. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Honda CRV hybrid. As always, if you've got any questions regarding the car and my time with it, please put them down in the comment section below. If you are a CRV hybrid owner and I've missed something, please again, put some comments down below. I always ask for you to like, subscribe, hit that bell notifications icon so it lets you know when I bring out a new video on AutoBez. I am, of course, on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and I always advise that you follow on there as well for additional content, including live videos and a lot of still images. But guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've definitely enjoyed the CRV hybrid. It's been a bit of a while since I've had a hybrid car or even an electric car to review, and I am really impressed with it. So guys, yeah, have yourselves a great day, and I will catch you all in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye.